Well, even as big tech continues to conspire to suppress my documentary, What is a Woman, most recently with Eventbrite's decision to ban all screening events and watch parties from their platform, still the ideas from the film and the question, the ultimate question, are out there. Nothing can be done now to stop that. In fact, the left is finally beginning to realize that they must come up with some kind of answer. They can't dodge it forever. And that's why today for our daily cancellation, I'm going to take a look at two of the most recent attempts to answer, and if not answer, then at least handle the great question of our time, what is a woman? So we begin with a man named Matt Ho, who is running for Senate in North Carolina on the Green Party platform. Matt was very proud of himself a few days ago when he tweeted this, quote, "Today I got my first what is a woman question. Before I could say anything, my campaign manager replied, F off, transphobe. There was no reason to say anything else. Hashtag F off, transphobe, hashtag trans rights are human rights." Now, as a Green Party candidate, I must admit it takes some guts to alienate 50% of your electoral base by cussing out one person. Still, it's a rather sad thing to see a grown man proud of the fact that he had to dodge a question that my 3-year-old could answer. Perhaps next he'll brag about the time when someone asked him whether the earth is flat or round, and he responded by bursting into tears and running out of the room. I mean, these are moments of true courage, right? Now, I tried to explain to Matt that F off is not exactly a sufficient answer to the question. And to his credit, he did give another attempt to actually answer it. Less to his credit, his second attempt is arguably even dumber than his first. A few hours later, he tweeted this. "For all the people demanding an answer as to what is a woman is a person who identifies as an adult female. Hashtag trans rights are human rights." Now look, in a certain sense, this is progress. At least he's not attempting to define the word woman by using the word woman. And yet this definition has its own very significant problems, because a female person is a human being who is of the nature to bear offspring and who produces ova, which are female gametes or reproductive cells. So if someone identifies as female, then they are identifying as a human capable of bearing offspring and producing ova. But a male who identifies as producing ova still cannot produce ova. He produces sperm, which are male gametes. No matter how he feels or what he says or how he identifies, he will produce male reproductive cells all the same. Therefore, identifying as female when you're male is no different in kind than identifying as 7 feet tall when you're actually 5.5 feet tall. So what Matt is claiming is that there is basically no difference, definitionally, between an actual 7-foot tall human being and a human being who's 1.5 feet shorter but views themselves as equal in height to the 7-foot person. But that's nonsense. I mean, if it's true that females are females, but then males can be females too, that means that females effectively don't exist. And if they don't exist, then it doesn't make any sense to identify as one. You can only identify as that which can be defined. But if it can't be defined, or rather if it can be defined, then there must be a physical reality against which your self-identification can be judged accurate or inaccurate. So if females exist, then males cannot be females. And if females do not exist, then males also cannot be females. So no matter what you do, males cannot be females. And Matt Ho is left up a creek without a paddle, and nobody is even sending a search party for him because nobody will know that he's missing because he's a Green Party candidate. It's a terrible situation all around. But if a politician on Twitter can't solve the riddle, maybe somebody on TikTok can. There's a video going around, recently gone viral, from a user called Circus Pork Roast, who, that's her username, who believes that she has finally, once and for all, come up with the answer to the dreaded question. Let's listen.
I keep seeing all these clips from the Matt Walsh documentary, What is a Woman?, where he asks these, gender studies experts, what is a woman? And then when they give him these long, carefully thought out answers that delve into the identity and the complexities of, the label of woman, he basically mocks them for not being able to give him a short, concise, biologically truthful answer. If you've watched any of his clips and you yourself have wondered, I don't understand why they can't just give a simple answer. It's such a simple question. I'm going to compare it to something else. And I'm going to ask you this question. What is a mother? Can you tell me that in one sentence?
Yes, I can. Thank you for asking. Mother is a term that describes a woman's relationship to her children. There you go. That's what it means. You know, you may think that myself, as a revered children's author, filmmaker, documentarian, women's studies scholar, that I would get a lot of respect, you know, and that I would feel respected. But often I don't, because there's just one title that I've been missing. And if you've been missing it too, then you need established titles. Established titles is your opportunity to earn the title of Lord or Lady and gain the respect that you so richly deserve, or at least I deserve, so I assume you do too. All you need is a 1 square foot plot of land in Scotland. Established titles is a project based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. In your title pack, you'll be bestowed with at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, plus an official certificate, which I have right here, proving that I am Lord Matt Walsh, and it's got the crest and everything that you need. Your certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. Title packs from Established Titles are a fun and unique gift for any occasion. There's also a couple packs that come with adjoining plots of land for the special someone in your life. With your certificate, you could officially add the prefix of Lord or Lady to your credit cards, your plane tickets, even your dating profiles, most importantly. And get this, Established Titles told me that the first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my exclusive link will receive a plot within a few walking minutes of mine. So we can all gather there together and stand on our 1 square foot of land and just look at each other, I guess. So depending on how many of you want to become a Lord or Lady, we can build our own kingdom. Established Titles is actually running a massive sale right now on top of this. Plus, if you use the code Walsh, you get an additional 10% off. So go to establishedtitles.com/Walsh to get your gifts now and help support the channel. Hopefully we can all move on with our lives now, but I suspect that's not the case.
And you might say, oh, well, obviously a mother is someone who has given birth and then raised children. But it's actually a lot more complicated than that, right? Because yes, there are mothers who were pregnant and gave birth to children and then raised those children, and we all agree those are mothers. But there's also people who adopted children. They didn't give birth, they were never pregnant, but we still consider them to be mothers because they take on the societal role of mother and they accept that as their role. And then there's also people who gave birth and then gave those children up for adoption and wanted nothing to do with them and don't consider themselves to be mothers. Are those mothers? Do we consider those mothers as well? And then there's also people who were pregnant but had a miscarriage. They consider themselves to be mothers, but there are certain people who argue against that and say, well, no, your baby was never born, and therefore you're not a mother. And then there are people who raise their nieces and nephews or their grandchildren as their own children. They consider themselves to be mothers, even though they are also aunts or grandmothers, therefore taking on 2 separate labels at once, and both of those things are true at the same time. And so, as you can see, a supposedly simple question that seems to be rooted in biological reality is actually much more rooted in the societal roles that people play and the labels that they accept upon themselves. And the same thing is true of gender. It's partially rooted in biology, but in our modern times, it's more so rooted in the roles we play in society and the labels we accept for ourselves.
Okay, let's try our best to sort through this. First of all, nothing that you said there actually makes the term mother confusing or opaque. As I already noted, the word mother describes a woman in relation to her children. A woman who gives birth to offspring is a mother. A woman who conceives children who then tragically die in utero is also a mother. A woman who adopts a child is a mother too, because that child, once adopted, is her child. What does it mean for him to be her child? Well, she's taking on the role as his primary female caretaker. She's accepting a unique legal and moral responsibility for and to the child. She is dedicating her life to him. She's a mother. This is not confusing. Now, there is some nuance here, sure. A child who is put up for adoption may end up with, in effect, 2 mothers, because the woman who gave birth to him is a mother in the biological sense, while the woman who adopts him is a mother in every other sense. This is why we often distinguish in those situations between mother and biological mother. Again, it's not really confusing. You only want to make it seem confusing because you think it helps you make something else seem confusing too. And that brings us to the second point. Even if I agree that the word mother is somehow vague or ambiguous, which I don't, that still wouldn't at all prove that the word woman is vague or ambiguous. There are ideas and concepts that are difficult and hard to define. That doesn't make all ideas and concepts difficult and hard to define. You can't prove that one word has no objective definition simply by asserting that some other word has no objective definition. This is what they do all the time. They say, well, you asked me to define woman. Can you identify this other word? What does that have to do with this word we're talking about? So because one word can't be defined, that means no word can be defined? It's especially absurd in this case when the other word, mother, actually does have an objective definition and everyone knows what the word means. The reason why mother has some extra complexity is that it is a word which describes a role and a relationship. You're right about that. But it's a role and relationship specifically fulfilled by women. Mother is a role that many women fill. But being a woman itself is not a role or a relationship. It is by definition a physical, biological identity. After all, if mother is a role and woman is a role, then who exactly is filling these roles? We can only say anything about mothers at all if we first establish that women exist and can be defined. There are plenty of other words that describe roles that women play or relationships they take part in. Sister, aunt, girlfriend, waitress, actress, etc. All of these are roles that a woman can play. But even if on the margins there is some element of ambiguity in some of these roles, the roles can only exist and we can only talk about them if women exist first. And whatever ambiguity you can find in the role does not at all even come close to creating ambiguity around the concept of womanhood itself. But all of this could almost be put to the side, because here's the real question for you. Whatever you think about mothers, whatever you think about women, I ask you this. If a man with no children, who isn't even a caretaker of children, like he sits at home all day playing video games. He's not even around children. If he stood up one day and declared that he's a mother, would you accept that self-identification as valid? Would you say, well, I guess you're a mother too? In other words, if I agree that the word mother has some complexity and nuance to it, does that mean that just anyone can legitimately claim the title for themselves? Does physical reality impose no requirements at all on the person who makes this claim? It may be difficult to wrap your arms around all that the word mother describes, but does that mean that it describes nothing? Does the word have a complex meaning or no meaning? You're wondering whether an aunt or a grandmother who's very close to a child counts as a mother, but would you wonder whether my 5-year-old son counts as a mother? I assume you would not. So you may struggle with the concept around the margins, yet you know that the word means something, and it therefore excludes people, lots of people actually, regardless of what they say about themselves or what anyone else says about them. And if you would agree that the word mother cannot be applied to just anyone, then you must agree that the word woman cannot be applied to just anyone. That there is a reality that the word describes, both in the case of women and mothers, and women who are mothers. There's a reality that it describes, which means that someone can make a claim, can identify themselves, and be wrong about it because it does not comport with the reality that the words are supposed to describe. That's the real point that you should be thinking about. And you'll have plenty of time to think about it because you are, today, on this first Flannel Friday, canceled. I know you're craving some more Matt Walsh Show content. Well, I have some great news for you. If you head over to dailywire.com and subscribe now, you can watch or listen to my full show. You can also listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll see you there.